Today, Brazil, in our hemisphere, largest country in the Western Hemisphere south of us, cut a trade deal with China. They're going to, from now on, do trade in their own currencies, get right around the dollar. They're creating a secondary economy in the world, totally independent of the United States. We won't have to talk about sanctions in 5 years because there'll be so many countries transacting in currencies other than the dollar that we won't have the ability to sanction them.
The battle for the new world currency unfolds as silver demand goes absolutely parabolic. So what's the new world currency going to be? Is it going to be crypto? Is it going to be asset-backed? Let's talk about it. Let's start with the prices of silver today. So as the recording of this video, it's $80.56. And I want to remind you guys that this was just $50, 2 months ago? However, we are down over 1 month, 7.29%, and over 5 days at 5.18%, which is essentially roughly what your premium would be if you purchased. Shanghai silver prices close at $86.70. I thought that was very interesting because the premium is now much lower, sitting at roughly $4.93. Quick history lesson, silver certificates lasted for 90 years, starting in 1878 to 1968. U.S. silver certificates were authorized under the Bland-Allison Act of February 28, 1878. And some of you guys may have already known this, but look at the silver certificates. Raise your hand and comment below if you have some of this collectible currency. Here is the cost to sell when we take a look at bullion exchange. Now, when we're talking only about silver eagles, the cost is only $4. So the premium is now what, roughly about 6-ish% to sell if it's a silver eagle. But what I also wanted to show you guys is regardless of what the price is, the demand for these metals, for silver, is going parabolic. Gold also, but predominantly silver. And I'm going to show you guys the top bullion dealers and what they're saying as far as demand. So here's the first one, guys. This is bullion exchange. And look on the top here. High demand alert, delays in processing, shipping, and customer service. Here's SD bullion that are still stating historic demand will cause processing, shipping, and phone call delays. Here's money metals. And again, these are top bullion dealers. Historic demand causing processing delays. There's APMEX, historical metal demand continues. JM Bullion, high demand is causing delays in processing, shipping, and support response times. The demand is parabolic. Now, earlier this morning, this was posted on X from a well insider just in. Turkey imports 8.79 million ounces in silver in just 1 month. While at the same time, inventory, like for example, that this article from Kobayashi Letter is pointing out, is absolutely plunging. Silver inventories on the Shanghai Future Exchange are collapsing. Shanghai's silver availability for delivery is down to just 350 tons, the lowest since 2015. Also from earlier this morning, Daniel Oliver is now saying that he believes that gold is going to hit $12,000 per ounce. I want to go over two interesting theories that I want Mitch to respond to regarding silver. The first one is from Mark for X. He's basically acknowledging that there's a silver industrial crisis when factories can't get the metal anywhere. And he's pointing out to things like hafnium and things like gallium, and the fact that when these producers need these minerals in the supply and they can't get them, they're willing to pay 40 to 70% higher on their premium. And he ultimately concludes, desperate industries paying 80% premiums or pre-financing entire mine production just to keep operations going prove that the physical scarcity of metals has moved from theory to urgent reality. But this breakdown is really what I want Mitch to respond to. This is from No Limits. This got about 600,000 views. And basically this man is asking the question, is silver a good investment? He's saying that yes, it is. There's a huge disconnect between paper and physical. But then he breaks down what he believes China and the US are doing to one another. So he's trying to make a point that China wants to keep metals cheap, stating most retail investors operate under the assumption that China wants silver to the moon. He's saying that that's incorrect because China is the global manufacturing engine and silver is their raw fuel for things like solar, EVs, and tech components. If the price rips, he's saying that their margins die. Industrialists that are desperate to keep silver suppressed below $50. He goes on to say China is positioning for gold-silver ratio of 200. It's a suppression play plain and simple. Again, this is what he's saying. He's saying also this, however, the same entity is aggressively long physical gold. So he's saying that they're betting on the spread. They want gold to fly while pinning silver down. Now he goes on to say this about the US. The Fed pivot strike price. The United States has designated silver a critical mineral. Here's the logic regarding the US's industrial base. If silver stays cheap, US processing facilities cannot compete with Chinese labor costs. It's mathematically impossible. They need silver expensive to incentivize domestic production. That's very interesting. And then they go on to say that there is debt, that BRICS is dumping treasuries and things of that nature. Ultimately concluding here, gold will be revalued to sovereigntize sovereign debt, and silver will violently catch up as the paper short is forced to cover. Mitch, can you respond to what we just went over? Do you think that China is trying to artificially suppress silver while at the same time wanting gold to go up in value? What do you make of all that?
I would strongly encourage everybody to go back and look at the video that we did yesterday called Intended Manipulation of the Noise, and You're Paying for It. In a market, it takes two different opinions to make a market. However, I prefer the quantitative approach versus the emotional approach. And both those articles that Travis just went through are based on emotion, not quantitative analysis. To that point, the article that he mentioned on Brazil and China, well, isn't it interesting? The exact same article and the exact same issue appeared in 2023, 2025, and now 2026. Where, well, Brazil Real has decided to get involved with swaps with the Chinese government in Beijing. Big deal. Doesn't mean anything. If it meant something, it wouldn't have happened in 23. Over and above that, as part of the noise, when the European Union was created, the lira lost roughly 26% in value overnight. How would you like to wake up one morning and find out your currency just devalued by 26%? So the European Union in and of itself was a failed social construct. It's going to blow apart. Why? Because of the creation of debt. What happened in Brazil? The creation of debt. What happened in China? The creation of debt to the GDP, basically 300% as compared to GDP. United States, 128% as recorded based on what we think we know. I mean, nobody knows exactly how much money has truly been printed here in the United States. The point that I'm getting at is that every one of these countries has excessive debt, and they're going to have to go back to their own currencies, and they're going to have to figure out a way, ideally simultaneously, how to eliminate the interest on that debt and get the debt down to a manageable level. So why is it white noise? It's all white noise because where would you rather have your money? You want your money in a bank participating in that list that I just went through, or would you rather have it in your pocket in the form of metal? That's supply and demand. So to Travis's point of the scarcity of metals, well, yeah, supply is limited, demand is through the roof for the exact same reason. It's got nothing to do with what they're talking about, which is emotion. What it has to do with is debt and who controls the money. That's where this whole problem is going to occur. It is occurring, and that's why we've been saying, as an idea, you might want to hold a little bit of precious metal somewhere and stick it back in the ground, because if you don't have it in your hand, you don't own it.
In other news, and to the point of yesterday's video, Chinese holdings of U.S. treasuries plunge to their lowest level since the global financial crisis in 2008. So yes, they still have U.S. treasuries that are probably levered up and attached to debt, but the trajectory is plummeting as they apparently are moving to potentially a collateral-backed currency, like with BRICS. Is it going to happen? Time will tell. Because it is possible that the U.S. would prefer, and other sovereign nations would prefer, to go to a crypto-based world currency. Listen to what this U.S. senator is saying about what the U.S. plans on doing in regard to purchasing Bitcoin.
Particularly pleased with President Trump's support of my strategic Bitcoin reserve initiative, which will address our national debt while securing America's position as the global leader in financial innovation. As Bitcoin comes into more usage, its use makes the whole system more secure, more robust, and more capable of serving our needs all over the world. We should be the global leader with this fantastic new ledger-based asset that is in a digital format that is going to be transformative of everyday economy and puts the everyday American, in fact, the everyday worker all over the world in control of their own money. What a wonderful blessing for hardworking people all over the world to have this great new technology and to have America lead the way in implementing this wonderful innovation.
Breaking news this morning, as Ash Crypto is pointing out that $40 billion has been wiped out from crypto markets in just 30 minutes. I don't know that she got the blessing today. Also, this morning, some more breaking news from Jacob Kinge. BlackRock just sent over 3,400 Bitcoin worth nearly $235 million to Coinbase in order to dump. Apparently, they didn't want the blessing, but the Vatican surely did, as this also comes out this morning. Vatican Bank launches Catholic-based stock indexes. Anytime someone's trying to sell something financial or really anything and they use religion, to me, even if it is the Vatican or the Vatican Bank, huge red flag. Huge red flag. Mitch, I'm just going to say it like it is, okay? If Bitcoin's not going to work, and I get it, right? It's supposed to be decentralized. There's only a certain amount. But if it's not going to work, then why are all the banks and even the administration saying, buy Bitcoin? It's going to the moon. Why would they say that if it's not going to work?
It's not that it can't work. It's that it will not work under its current structure. And that senator is doing exactly what I said in yesterday's video, preaching and screeching based on emotion. If you want to quantitatively look at this, answer a few questions. How exactly is this a benefit to the consumer? They have cash in their pocket. They can go spend that cash. Who is in control of her wish list? Who's going to control the money? That was in yesterday's video. We laid that out. What if the preachers and screechers are wrong? Where's the safety mechanism? Well, we don't know that. We don't want to talk about that. Where are the assets that are going to back these coins? Well, yeah, we don't want to talk about that either. So what do we really have? White noise. It literally means nothing. She's standing up there making proclamations, every one of which is nothing more than a fantasy. It's a wish list. It doesn't become quantifiable until it's backed by an asset.
Some last bits of information before we give you guys our final advocacy update. Here's what this says. U.S. loan delinquencies rose to 4.8% of household debt in Q4. That is the highest since 2017, driven by low income and young borrowers. But the thing is that honestly, 95% of American households have low income because of the inflation and theft of our purchasing power. I thought a great way to go into the last segment, which is just a one-page document that's going to go into Mitch's response to the Texas Supreme Court as we battle to abolish property taxes and stop property tax fraud. I figured it would be great listening to Governor DeSantis.
From the property tax situation, it's very important given how that's pinched so many homeowners, particularly our senior citizens, who have their homes paid off and they bought it 30 years ago for a certain amount. Now they're being told it's worth so much more and they have to pony up more and more money. It's almost like they have to pay rent to the government just to be able to enjoy their property. And that's wrong. We need to do something about it.
Now, one of the things that he can do is call upon us, put a council together. We'll explain to you why it's way more than senior citizens that would help, like farmers, grocery stores, young adults, renters even, because we all know that it's passed through rent. Like, for example, I pay $1,000 a month in property taxes. If I no longer had to pay that, then I could easily drop the rent that I charge the tenants. And even though that I'm renting right now because I got priced out of the market. Crazy situation. You guys should know about it. Mitch, Whenever you're ready, sir, can you read this preemption of opposing counsel?
Coincidentally, early this morning, I received an email from a person in New York asking if I could do in New York what it is that we have done here in Texas. And the answer is that this isn't just a Texas issue. It is applicable also across the United States. It's applicable wherever Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, USPAP, has been used to defraud the public and create fraudulent school district bonds. That's why on my website, there's a document called The Importance of the Vexler Case to Texas. But I want to make it clear, because maybe I haven't done the good enough job at doing this. That document is not just applicable to Texas. It is literally applicable across the United States. It is that important. Every person who is a property owner, every judge, and every attorney should be reading that document because it lays the entirety of the case out. With that said, the preemption of opposing counsel is why we are where we are at the Texas Supreme Court. Last week, the Texas Supreme Court requested a response from opposing counsel representing Denton Central Appraisal District. Mavex, my company, will be responding to the response from the opposing counsel. We expect opposing counsel will put forth the exact same nonsense to prohibit adjudication of the fraud being perpetrated against every real estate property owner and every citizen in Denton County. Perhaps the Supreme Court of Texas now sees the constitutional issue brought forth, which outlines there is no redress in the case of fraud committed against a property owner, be it residential, land, or commercial. By a taxing authority created under appraisal review statute to show how the fraud has been created and manipulated and the ability to obtain a resolution is being prohibited according to opposing counsel. The appraisal process disallows investigation of fraud in that process, which negates the very existence of uniform standards of professional appraisal practice. The statute is unilaterally interpreted and exercised prevents the discovery of fraud. There is no due process as unilaterally interpreted and exercised of structured review. The constitutional question is, can the legislature or lower courts constitutionally bar judicial review of systemic fraud by confining them to an administrative scheme that lacks discovery, subpoena power, or fraud adjudication authority? Why should the Supreme Court of Texas care? This is a classic open courts problem if the ARBs, the appraisal review boards, are the exclusive forum and the chief appraiser is allowed to commit fraud where an ultra virus is not enforceable, as claimed by opposing counsel, then property owners have no meaningful remedy for fraud. That is exactly the type of constitutional anomaly the Supreme Court of Texas exists to resolve. As I've stated in writing and on video many times, either the law exists or it doesn't. No constitutional entity can allow fraud to escape. The most important question for opposing counsel representing the CAD, its employees, and counsel itself as an officer of the court, if you don't intend to allow the resolution and discovery by every Texan with regard to the property tax fraud and related school district bond fraud that is being committed upon every citizen, why is that? This question is applicable across the United States in all counties claiming to adhere to USPAP, Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, where the evidence proves the exact opposite. No government, state or federal, in the history of the planet can outrun the Rule of 72. No government, state or federal, can outrun reverse amortization, which is exactly what they have created. On my website, top dead center, mockingbirdproperties.com/DCAD, is the amicus brief that is now in front of the Texas Supreme Court. Below that amicus brief is the importance of the Vexler case to Texas and the United States. It is applicable across the United States. So please, everybody that's looking at it and saying, I've got this problem, I've got this problem, we've already defined the problem for you. We hope to get this looked after here in Texas, and that'll have massive ramifications because the exact same fraud is being committed against the vast majority of the population, the property owners, and in reality, every citizen of the United States, because they're paying for the inflation as a direct result of the fraud, totaling
Yes.
roughly 5.1 trillion of school district bond fraud.
Yeah. And you guys, this is going to be sent out just as soon as this video is released on YouTube. It's going to go out through Substack. It's going to be linked in the description, the video's description below. And we're going to conclude this video. Don't forget to go to our website. You guys know that we are pushing to make positive changes that last around the nation. We want to be the fighters of the people. We want to be your servant leaders. Comment below. Let us know how we're doing. Share the video. Hype it if you guys can. But other than that, if you guys are out there just trying to figure out what's going on, trying to do the right thing, you guys already know we wish you luck and we hope you win.